welcome to our new video. And in this video, we will discuss the job requirements of risk data officer. And this is for those candidates who are looking for remote jobs, especially in different specialized institutions like financial services, technology companies, and gaming industry, etc. So in this video, we will discuss the knowledge base, skills, and job responsibilities. So let's start. First of all, we will discuss the knowledge base and what a risk data officer is required to know to work as a risk data officer on a remote job basis. So, usually, the organizations like financial institutions and other industries post jobs related to risk data officers, and they prescribe certain requirements and knowledge base. So, we are going to discuss those key requirements one by one. So the number one is industry knowledge. By industry knowledge, the organizations mean that the candidate should have a strong knowledge of the institution where they are going to apply for a risk data officer job. Like, for example, financial services institutions, including banks or money service businesses or payment gateways. So, you have to see which type of organization is that where you are going to apply for a risk data officer job, and you should have the knowledge of that industry. By knowledge, we mean that what are the overall structure of that organization, what are the rules and regulations that apply to that institution. You should have the knowledge of that. Similarly, if you are applying for manufacturing or any gaming or technology company, you should have the understanding of the industry where that organization operates in. Number two is industry development knowledge. Once you have identified that the institution is like, for example, a bank, so you should know that in the banking industry there is a boom of digitalization, use of artificial intelligence, or the preparation for the adoption of artificial intelligence regulations and AI tools and techniques, and what are the challenges that are prevalent in that industry. So you should have the understanding, because in the interview you will be asked about the industry development knowledge. Similarly, as the risk data officer job, as the name suggests, you should have the knowledge of risk management frameworks and risk management activities, like, for example, enterprise risk management knowledge and operational risk management knowledge and credit risk management knowledge. So, when we talk about the enterprise risk management, we mean the overall enterprise risk management framework and the overall enterprise risk management landscape, including the operational risk management, credit risk management, treasury risk management, finance risk management, compliance risk management, etc. So, enterprise risk management is a broader term and it includes the overall enterprise. So, you should have the knowledge of enterprise risk management for the industry where you are applying for the job. Similarly, you can be asked about the operational risk management. You should know what is operational risk. If you have not watched my previous videos, I have uploaded videos on operational risk where we have discussed the concepts with examples. So you can check my channel. The channel name is GRC, and you are watching this video on my channel. So you can check out my other videos as well. I will put the link in the description to this video as well, so you can check from that as well. So you should have the knowledge of operational risk. What are the key operational risks that are faced by the institution where you are going to apply for the job? You should have knowledge how operational risk management activities work. So you should have the knowledge of processes and activities. Again, you can see my previous videos for better knowledge. Then you may be asked about the three lines of defense. And three lines of defense model means the first line of defense, second line of defense, and the third line of defense. First line of defense means the people who are working on the front end, like the business units, like the branches who are facing the customers, and the sales team, and those individuals who are facing the customers or at the forefront of the organization, and those individuals lie in the first line of defense. Second line of defense includes the risk management, compliance, information technology, etc. Because these stakeholders basically support the overall institution, so they are classified into second line. And similarly, the third line is internal audit. Internal audit is basically an independent department, reports to the board audit committee. Therefore, the significance of audit is very important in any organization. Therefore, that is classified in the third line of defense. So, you should have the knowledge of three lines of defense. I have briefly given you the idea here. Then you should have knowledge of the key regulations and compliance challenges of the industry. Like, for example, if you are applying in the bank or you are applying in the payment gateway or money service business, then you should know that anti-money laundering, know your customer, ESG regulations are crucial for these types of organizations or institutions. So similarly, you may be asked about the risk universe understanding. So you should know what should be the scope of the relevant risk sources, like for example, internal loss database or the compliance regulations. You can extract the risk from the compliance regulations, applicable frameworks, internal audit reports, etc. So you should have a knowledge of risk universe. Risk data and its analysis knowledge. As the job title is risk data officer, so you are supposed to perform the risk data analytics, and you should first of all know what is risk data. When we talk about the term risk data in an organization, it means the past risk incidents, like for example, cyber attacks occurred, or you can say the frauds occurred, internal frauds or external frauds, etc. Similarly, lost databases, where the past incidents are recorded as a database in an organization. So you can extract the risk data from the database. Similarly, internal audit observations or internal audit reports highlight certain kinds of risk data, so you can extract the risk data from the internal audit reports. Similarly, regulators, like for example central banks, who inspect the organizations or institutions which they regulate, so they also issue the observations after their inspections and visits. So the regulators observations are also one of the sources for risk data, and they can also be classified in the risk universe. Similarly, you may be asked for the risk reporting knowledge. So you should have knowledge of risk dashboards, what a risk dashboard should look like, what are different types of risk reports that a risk data officer will be preparing, and similarly, what should be the frequency and what are the frequencies of the risk reporting to the higher management, like to the chief risk officer. So these were the broader remote job knowledge requirements for risk data officer. I would suggest you to go these one by one again, and you can rewind this video and listen to what I have said, because these are the conceptual requirements. Now let's move on to the next part of this video. What a risk data officer remote job related key responsibilities that the risk data officer will be performing, and these responsibilities are basically the job description of the person who is going to work as the remote risk data officer. So number one is oversee the first line of defense. As we discussed, what is the first line of defense, and so the person will be responsible to oversee the activities of the first line of defense, and the person or the risk data officer would be required to perform objective risk assessment, effective challenge, and monitoring. Basically, as we discussed, the first line of defense are the people who are working at the forefront of the organization, who are dealing with the customers like sales department, branches, account opening officers, account opening team, etc. And the third line of defense is the internal audit, who will actually ultimately review the activities of the first line and second line. So here the first line of defense is very important, which means the people who are working on the forefront. So the risk data officer will be performing the objective risk assessment. The person will be identifying the risks in the first line of defense. Like for example, if the person at the first line of defense is responsible for opening customer accounts, then the risk data officer will be identifying fraud risks and the non-performance of applicable KYC regulations related risks, etc. Similarly, effective challenge and monitoring means the person who will be acting as the risk data officer would be required to give challenge to the first line of defense, because the person should have the critical mindset and analytical mindset, and should have knowledge of applicable laws, regulations, and the activities of the first line of defense. Therefore, when the person has the required level of knowledge of the first line of defense activities, then he or she can give the challenge and argue about different activities and processes. Similarly, regular monitoring is required. Further, provide leadership, consultation, and support to the stakeholders for the application of risk management techniques, practices, and procedures. It is a support function. Risk data officer will be acting as a support function in the organization and will be assisting the operational risk head or enterprise risk management head. So, he or she will be required to consult with different stakeholders within the organization, like business teams, like support teams, operations teams, technology teams, etc. And the purpose is to ensure that the risk management techniques, practices, and procedures laid down in the policies are appropriately applied. Like, for example, how the risk will be identified in different departments like technology, business, operations. What are different risk management techniques and practices, like, for example, use of risk and control self-assessment, RCSA tool, or the key risk indicators monitoring. And the procedures means how the activities are going to be identified, how the risks are going to be identified and written in a formal manner for risk assessment purposes. So the risk data officer will be providing consultation. Risk data officer is also required to analyze the risk data, and risk data reports preparation is also the responsibilities. Risk data means, as we earlier discussed, the previous loss incidents, previous cyber attacks, previous frauds incurred, previous, you can say, errors or significant system lapses reported, and so on. So the risk data is extracted from the risk universe, and risk universe, as we already discussed, is the internal audit observation reports. Regulatory compliance requirements is also one of the sources of the risk universe, and the regulatory inspections report. So the person will be responsible to prepare the periodic risk data reports and share with the chief risk officer or the enterprise risk management head, whatever may be the case. And so the person would also be required to ensure that risk policies are updated. By risk policies, we mean that there are different types of policies implemented in the organization from risk management perspective, like, for example, enterprise risk management policy, operational risk management policy, credit risk policy, liquidity risk management policy, and so on. So the person would be required to ensure that risk policies are updated based on new requirements of applicable risk management frameworks, regulations, and standards. By risk management frameworks, we know that there are different kinds of risk management frameworks applicable in the financial institutions, especially, like, for example, COSO Enterprise Risk Management Framework, or the ISO 31000 Risk Management Framework, and so on. So the person should have knowledge of the risk management frameworks, regulations, and standards as well, in order to ensure that risk policies are aligned with the new requirements prescribed in those laws and regulations. Similarly, the person would be required to perform periodic risk reviews plans and to monitor the effectiveness of key risk management activities like operational risk management, liquidity risk management, compliance risk management, credit risk management. If you do not know about these domains, I would recommend you to go on my channel, GRC channel on the YouTube here, where you are watching this video, and you can see the conceptual videos there in order to build the knowledge base. So please do visit those videos as well, and I would also request you to please share this video with your friends and colleagues and family members who are looking for jobs, remote jobs in the risk management domains. So these types of videos would help them understand what the employer basically requires. So now coming back to our video, the person will be required to update the risk registers and risk scorings. By risk registers and risk scoring means every institution prepares the risk registers for different domains. Like, the purpose of risk register is to jot down or write down the identified risks perform inherent risk assessment, mapping of controls, perform residual risk assessment, and so on. So the risk scorings are basically calculated based on the likelihood and impact of the identified risks, and then the risks are prioritized, which means what risks are to be catered first for the purpose of implementation of the controls, and what will be the controls and risks that will be taken up by the organization in the second phase and third phase. You can imagine the prioritization of risk. Like for example, one risk is very significant, so obviously the institution will pay the attention to that risk first, because if the attention or if the controls are not applied to mitigate that significant risk, there might be huge financial losses, reputational losses, and so on. So the entity or organizations prioritize their risks. The risk prioritization is linked with the risk assessment, and risk assessment is performed using the risk registers, and risk scoring is also part of the risk registers. New risk and controls that are implemented by the organization also require updation of the risk registers. So the person would be responsible to see whether the risk registers are updated and maintained. And finally, the collaboration with internal audit team would be required to facilitate in performing the risk management audits. So these were basically the key responsibilities of the chief risk of the risk data officer, remote job. And now you would be thinking how remotely these activities would be performing. Basically the organizations provide you the restricted access, remote access, and they provide the information, they provide the dashboards, and they provide the systems, and you can gain access to on a remote basis. But in order to perform these roles and responsibilities, you should have sufficient knowledge of these activities and responsibilities that I discussed here, and you should know what a remote risk data officer knowledge base should be. So I would request you to please subscribe this channel and share this video with your friends and colleagues, and stay tuned for my next series related to the remote jobs interview requirements and knowledge based requirements. And thank you for watching.